Good morning, students. How are you all? So, let us understand today the next part of the story Grandpa Tickles a Tiger. He licked Grandfather's hands and only sprang away when a leopard in the next cage snarled at him. Here, the meaning of snarled is showed teeth in anger, and he refers to the tiger. So, the tiger licked Grandfather's hands. The tiger rolled his tongue over the hands of Grandfather, and when the leopard in the next cage showed his teeth in anger at him, then the tiger sprang away. Grandfather shooed the leopard away, and the tiger returned to lick his hands. Seeing this, Grandfather shooed the leopard away. He made the leopard move away, and when the leopard would go away, then the tiger would come back to lick his hands, to lick the hands of Grandfather. But every now and then the leopard would rush at the bars. That means the leopard would come towards the bars after every few minutes, and the tiger would slink back to his corner. Slink means to move quietly and slowly. Whenever leopard came near the bars, the tiger would move back quietly and slowly to the corner. A number of people had gathered to watch the reunion when a keeper pushed his way through the crowd and asked Grandfather what he was doing. Seeing this sight, the reunion between Grandfather and the tiger, a number of people gathered there, because it's really scary to see. You can see in the picture also here, Grandfather is allowing the tiger to lick his hand. So this is really very scary. So the crowd of people also gathered over there to watch this sight. So at that time the zookeeper came through the crowd, and he asked Grandfather that what he was doing. "I am talking to Timothy," said Grandfather. "Weren't you here when I gave him to the zoo 6 months ago?" Now Grandfather replied that he was talking to his Timothy, and he also asked the zookeeper that before 6 months, when he gave Timothy to the zoo, was that zookeeper not there? Was he new? "I haven't been here very long," said the surprised keeper. The zookeeper was surprised at this sight. So he replied the Grandfather that yes, he was not there for very long. He was new there. "Please continue your conversation." So he asked Grandfather to carry on with his conversation. "But I have never been able to touch him myself, and he is always very bad-tempered." The zookeeper also told the Grandfather that he himself had never been able to touch that tiger. That tiger is actually very bad-tempered. "Why don't you put him somewhere else?" suggested Grandfather. "That leopard keeps frightening him. I'll go and see the superintendent about it." Now Grandfather, because he did not like the leopard again and again scaring the tiger, so he suggested the zookeeper that why don't he put the leopard, here him refers to the leopard, somewhere else. So that leopard, what he told, that leopard keeps frightening him. Who is him here? Him is the tiger. The tiger which the Grandfather considered to be Timothy. He also said that he would go and meet the superintendent of the zoo about this, that he would talk to the superintendent to keep that leopard somewhere away from that tiger. Grandfather went in search of the superintendent of the zoo, but found that he had gone home early. And so, after wandering about the zoo for a little while, he returned to Timothy's cage to say goodbye. It was beginning to get dark. Now what happened? Now grandfather, he went away in search of the superintendent of the zoo. But that day, the superintendent of the zoo had returned to his home early. He was not there in the zoo at that time. So the grandfather, after wandering means moving aimlessly. So after wandering about the zoo for some time, grandfather returned to the cage of Timothy to bid him goodbye. And it was getting little dark also. It was beginning to get dark. So now it was the time for grandfather to go back. He had been stroking and slapping Timothy for about 5 minutes when he found another keeper observing him with some alarm. Grandfather recognized him as the keeper who had been there when Timothy had first come to the zoo. Who is he here? Grandfather. Grandfather had been stroking and slapping that tiger for about 5 minutes, not just for a while, but for about 5 minutes. Then, at that moment, another zookeeper was observing both of them, and he was a bit alarmed also, frightened, we can say, to see this sight. Grandfather recognized him as the keeper who had been there when Timothy had first come to the zoo. Grandfather recognized him. Him here is this another zookeeper who was now watching both of them. So who was him? He was that zookeeper who was there when before 6 months when Timothy had first come to the zoo. So the grandfather recognized that zookeeper. You remember me? Said grandfather. Now why don't you transfer Timothy to another cage away from this stupid leopard? Here grandfather tells that zookeeper, he asks him that does he remember him, the grandfather, and he also asked him that why he doesn't transfer Timothy to some other cage away from that leopard, because that leopard was frightening Timothy. But sir, stammered the keeper. Stammered means to speak with difficulty. It is not your tiger. The zookeeper, he was too much scared to see that sight, and he also knew that that tiger was not Timothy. So he stammered that was not the tiger of grandfather. I know, said grandfather testily. Testily means in an irritated manner. I realize he is no longer mine, but you might at least take a suggestion or two from me. Grandfather was irritated that why that zookeeper was telling that the tiger is not his, is not of grandfather. So he said that yes, he know that that tiger was no longer his, but he also wanted the zookeeper to take at least a suggestion from him. I remember your tiger very well, said the keeper. He died 2 months ago. Now what was the reply of the zookeeper? That he remembered his tiger very well. He has not forgotten that tiger. That tiger actually died 2 months back. Died? Exclaimed grandfather. Now grandfather was surprised at the answer of the zookeeper. He asked him, he exclaimed, died? Is his tiger no more now? Yes, sir, of pneumonia. This tiger was trapped in the hills only last month and he is very dangerous. Now that zookeeper that that tiger which belonged to grandfather died because of pneumonia. He suffered from pneumonia and then he died, and the tiger which is at that moment in the cage that was trapped in the hills, and he was trapped the last month only, and that tiger is actually dangerous. Now grandfather could think of nothing to say. The tiger was still licking his arm with increasing relish. Relish means with great enjoyment. Now grandfather became speechless. That tiger, which was not Timothy, was still licking the arm of grandfather and with increasing relish. Grandfather took what seemed to him an age to withdraw his hand from the cage. Took an age means took a long time to move away his hand from the cage. With his face near the tiger's, he mumbled, "Good night, Timothy," and giving the keeper a scornful look, walked briskly out of the zoo. Now here grandfather had mixed feeling. He was sad also at the loss of Timothy, and he might be a bit scared also that the tiger whom he was allowing to lick his hand was not his own tiger. So he brought his face near the tiger and then he mumbled. Mumbled means he spoke quietly. "Good night, Timothy." And he also gave the zookeeper a scornful look. Scornful means expressing disrespect. Then the grandfather walked briskly. Briskly means quickly and energetically. The grandfather moved energetically out of the zoo. He went away from that zoo. So this story is actually taken from the novel The Day Grandfather Tickled a Tiger, written by Ruskin Bond. Thank you so much, students. I hope you all will study nicely. So study well, and in case of any doubt, you can ask me in your Zoom class or in your class WhatsApp group. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.